pinligt. Hvis det er pinligt, kan du det her bilen? Så kom, så tag den. Tag den.
Vil du selv fortælle dem det? Vi skal skilles, fordi at far han gerne vil være en kvinde.
Og man ved ikke altid, hvad folk de har at byde på, før man lærer dem at kende.
Jeg ringede lige før og sagde, at han kommer i kvægetøj.
Så vil jeg gerne fortælle jer, at jeg har besluttet mig for, at jeg gerne vil hedde Agnete.
Hun vil altid være vores far.
Hej.
You have such beautiful daughters.
Thank you.
Like mother, like daughters.
Kan du ikke godt sige til hende, du ikke er min mor?
Kat, vil du godt lade være med at lægge den her aften for mig? God kamp.
Hello and welcome to this live Q&A for A Perfectly Normal Family. And my name is Camilla. My name is Camilla Gürtler. I'm a Danish director, theatre director and producer in London at the moment. I'm also the artistic director of Cut the Cord Theatre, which focuses on Nordic theatre in the UK. And I'm really excited to be sharing this Q&A with Malou Reymann, who is the writer and director of this fantastic film that we're going to discuss today. Malou, you are obviously the writer and director, and it's the debut from you as well. And the film has done really well around the world, and you are now being screened in the UK. So it's really exciting to hear about your experience kind of making this fantastic film and your experience of it now going around the world. Before we start, just to say that this Q&A is organised by Modern Films and the DK-UK Association, the Anglo-Danish Society, the Danish-Scottish Society, and also the Danish Embassy in the UK. We are going to talk a bit about kind of the making of this film and also listen to some of your questions. So you will be able to send some of your questions on Facebook through the kind of comment function. We will look at it towards the end of the Q&A. So if you've got any questions for Malou about this film, please do put it into the comment section in Facebook. You might have watched the film already, or you may be watching it through some of these fantastic organizations that are helping it, bringing it to the UK at the moment. So we're really excited to kind of discuss it today. Malou, so I've got a couple of questions for you, obviously about sort of how you have worked on it, especially because it's based on your own personal story. But obviously just to go through sort of what the film is about, we've just seen a trailer, a clip, which shows this moment in a family's life where there's a big change because the father decides to live his life as a woman. And we kind of follow this transition through the eyes of Emma, which is his youngest daughter, and how that changes their lives. So Malou, my first question to you is, because A Perfectly Normal Family is based on your own experience when you were a child, what was the biggest challenge of writing and directing a film, and your debut film that's based on something so personal?
Well, so I think there was probably two things that were the most challenging because it was based on my own experience. And one was obviously that it's based on a family. And my family also experienced with me when I was 11, and that meant that they have had their own experience of it, and they had their own memory of it, and me deciding to write and direct a film about it in the way I wanted to would obviously affect them. So there was something quite important for me in feeling very ready for doing that in the way that I wanted to, because it's very easy to get affected by a lot of opinions in such a creative process. There's so many people involved, and there will be a lot of opinions, but of course also having your like personal relations involved in all these opinions is confusing. So you need to really be very ready for that, and to not kind of go into any other paths than the one you want to be on. And I think that's very difficult, because obviously it's a kind of selfish decision. You kind of need to say, this is what I need to do as a filmmaker, and it will affect other people that I care about, but I can't let that kind of direct me off my path. So I needed to be ready to do that. That was probably the most difficult thing. And I think the other thing was that I had always lived with this as a very personal and private story. So even my closest collaborators didn't know that my dad was a woman before I pitched the film. So of course, suddenly sharing this part of my life with all these professional relationships I had at the time that didn't know me in that way, that was super challenging, especially because I already felt different, because I'm a young female filmmaker, and it's a very masculine world, the film industry, also here in Denmark. So I was already different, and then coming with something that is also very different from most people is challenging. Yeah.
And how did that decision come about then? So obviously you've lived with this story and experience for so long. Where did the idea to kind of to turn it into a film, and your debut film as well, how did that then start?
I hadn't planned for that at all. Actually, when I went to film school, I studied at the National Film and Television School in England, and when I graduated from there, I was working on another feature film that was also funded by the Danish Film Institute. And I was working on that for about a year before the commissioner turned it down. And in hindsight, I'm so happy that he turned it down. But obviously at the moment I was really upset about it and very angry with him and thought he made the wrong decision. But still he invited me for a meeting to talk about it. And I went, which I'm really happy about, because like that, he asked me if I had any other projects in mind, and I didn't. But obviously I was sitting with the commissioner at the Danish Film Institute, who has all the funding, and I couldn't say that I didn't have any other ideas. So I said that I had this idea that at some point in my career, when I had made at least a few other feature films, I wanted to use this experience as some inspiration for writing a film. And he just said, I want to watch that film.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So it came kind of, I didn't plan it, but I think it was the perfect way that it happened, because that meant that, like, I don't know if I had ever felt ready if it had come from me, but because I was forced to take that step, it happened that way. And I think it was super lucky, because it was the right timing in every way, both for me personally, but also just the whole conversation about being transgender has obviously changed so much in maybe the last 5 years, that suddenly it became quite easy to work with this material. People were responding well to it from the beginning. So that was really working for the film.
And I think one of the things that's so fascinating about the film is that you obviously talk about the kind of process of transitioning and becoming transgender, which is something that you say, we are talking about a lot more at the moment, but not from necessarily this angle. And I know that obviously, again, it's a kind of personal story to you, and then we see this story and transition from Emma's perspective, who is 11 in the film. How come you decided to go with her perspective in this conversation?
No, so as you point out, obviously that was my perspective. I was 11 when my dad transitioned, and I was, as Emma, very what can I say, critical towards it. I was really angry with my dad, and so there was something in that perspective that was true to me, and that I could I felt like that was a story I could tell. But I think furthermore, I was just interested in telling a story about a family undergoing a massive change. And of course, it was specifically a dad transitioning from man to woman in this case, but I wanted it to be something that could mirror other kinds of changes that other families go through. Because I think there was something about, I was in a way very interested in these kind of themes with normality and being different and standing out of the norm and going from kind of identifying with the norm to suddenly having to see yourself in a different way. And so there was something with that journey that I was interested in, and that could kind of mirror all kinds of changes that families experience, like divorce or moving to a different place, or illness in a family, something that kind of changed the dynamics where everyone in the family experiences it in a different way, but you also experience that change as a family. And that was kind of taking the perspective of Emma enabled me to use the very specific experience of a father undergoing like this transition, but at the same time making it accessible to people who don't necessarily have this exact experience of a change.
And I think that's so brilliantly shown in the trailer that we just watched, that scene when obviously they sit the two daughters down and reveal that it's not a normal divorce, as you would say, but there's these other events as well. And I think obviously that comes down to your direction as well, in how you work with the actors and how you portray the different characters' perspectives. And I know you work with some really exciting actors from Denmark as well. And most, I would say, notably Emma's performance is very strong, and also Mikkel Følsgaard, just making sure I'm saying this correctly, Mikkel Følsgaard, who's from A Royal Affair and Land of Mine, that people might have seen as well. How did you work together with Mikkel, for example, for portraying Agnete's transition and experience? How did you work together on set to make sure that that was truthful?
Well, that started way earlier, actually. Like, of course, we were working together on set, but he actually got involved quite early on, and as the first actor involved in the project. So Mikkel actually approached me about the project because he had heard that I was working on it. And I hadn't thought about him because I thought the character would be older. But once I knew, so he had kind of talked to someone to make sure that I knew he was interested. And once I knew that, I was in the middle of writing, and suddenly Mikkel was just a character. In all the scenes, I was seeing Mikkel, and I was like, what? How did you just make yourself your way into this film? But it just happened like that, and I'm so grateful for that, because first of all, just because he's so right for the role, but also because it really showed that he had a real genuine interest in exploring this character and that specific journey that the character goes through in the film. And I think that really takes a lot of courage. I think in many like levels, of course, there's one of saying, okay, I dare to do this as a male actor, knowing that there will be criticism about that. There's also saying, I want to explore my own femininity in a role, which is just still a big taboo, I think, in the world we live in. So there was a lot of things where it was very important that I knew that he really wanted to do it. And then we actually worked together on the script. He was part of the second and third and the final draft. And we talked a lot, obviously, and we decided that he shouldn't meet my dad, because it wasn't about, first of all, I wasn't interested in making a documentary. I wasn't interested in making anything that was about how it was for me or my family. It wasn't about that. So there was something very important for me and for him in saying that he had the liberty to create the character the way that felt right, and exactly this thing with using his own femininity and not kind of trying to mirror something that he saw in either my dad or someone else. So there was something where we really just tried to work with it as, I think, any other character, and in a way not focusing so much on it being a transgender character, but just a character like any other character. But of course there was a lot of things that were about physicality. So we needed to make him a, I don't know how you say it in English, but like a suit or a body, like a female body that he could wear. So of course that was part of it, and also the whole kind of costumes and makeup, and really finding who was Agnete as a woman. And I think also on set, what we worked a lot with was kind of the levels of masculinity and femininity, because obviously it's a character that is trying to find herself as a woman, but from a body that has been but from the experience of having lived life as in a male body for so many years. And I think Mikkel having that experience actually really helped us. So I think, there was a lot of trust, and I think him trusting me that I really knew what I was talking about, and that I had his back, that it would never get kind of absurd or comical, at least not in a way that wasn't respectful. Because there is some, we talked about that there is some I don't know, comic aspect in it, and there's also some absurdity in it. And of course there's a lot of cultural references where it's been kind of this comical thing that men have been kind of dressed out as women. And I think he just really needed to know that I would never expose him or the character in a way that wasn't respectful.
And I guess in a way, turning it first into a script and then into a film must also have kind of changed things for you a bit in a way. I guess when you process something that you've lived through creative output, I guess it changes things for you as well. Have you had an experience like that? What has the film done for you creatively, looking back at your own experiences?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess in a way it all kind of happened before I started making the film, I think. Or I worked so much with the experience. I did a lot of therapy. I was kind of ready for it to be, to it being kind of material I was working with, and in a way that was similar to if it was something I hadn't experienced myself. So I think, I don't know if it changed so much from when I started to when I finished, but there was definitely an element of kind of uniting myself as a person and a filmmaker in that process, exactly because, as I was saying before, it was something I was living with very privately prior to starting the process. So involving my professional relationships, my producers, my collaborators like the Danish Film Institute, and later on, of course, the press. Like suddenly to kind of going from no one knowing to kind of being completely open and having my dad with me at work. That was, of course, a very big change. But I don't know if it made me look at it differently. It was just kind of, it was a very, I don't know, it was a very beautiful experience, actually.
And obviously now that's grown outside of Denmark as well. So you've been screening internationally. It's received critical acclaim from around the world. Like I've said, you're coming to the UK now as well. Well, maybe not physically, but at least the film is. What would you hope an international audience would take from this film?
Yeah, it's funny because I actually made it very specifically Danish. Like it's set in a suburb and in the 90s, and it has all these references of time and space, which is very specific to Denmark, like in a Danish suburb in the 90s. But I think so that was a decision we made because we wanted to make it a film that was accessible to a Danish audience and not just a small kind of art house film that would do well in festivals, but I actually wanted it to talk into kind of this, I don't know, in Danish you say familien Danmark, like I wanted this subject to be kind of accessible to, I don't know, people who wouldn't normally see a film with transgender characters. And I guess there was something about that which in a way also made it accessible to an international audience. Because yes, it's about a family where the dad transitions, but it's also just about a family that changes and who needs to deal with that change and what it does to their relationships. So I think, and that was kind of my main question in working with the material, was how much change can love take? Like, is there a limit? Will this, like, can people change too much and then love breaks? So that was kind of what I was working with thematically. And I think that made it bigger than just suburban Denmark. And I think there's something about, this, how the norm is kind of changing at the moment, how we are trying to be more inclusive, how we're trying to look at minorities not as being different, but also having real life experiences that need to be represented in our storytelling, need to be represented on news, in the stories we tell about ourselves as humanity, that is suddenly kind of making its way into what it means to be a human, that being like a white man is not the only way to live. So I guess it's just that there's something in our time where that is kind of changing, and that's super interesting. And I think the film is talking into that, going from just being like living in the core of the norm to suddenly seeing yourself as much more than that.
And I think that's what's so beautiful about it, is that it resonates with so many people, because we see the everyday activities that you might do as a family, going on holiday, what the activities that your children might have outside of school might be, but how all of that is affected by change. And exactly like you say, it could be any kind of change, but how it affects each individual. And I think that's what's so beautiful about how you've directed it as well, is that it is so subtle, that you recognize kind of the tone of everyday life rather than it being heightened and dramatic as you might.
Yeah. No, I'm really happy you say that, and that you saw that in the film, because I really wanted it to avoid making a sensational film, because I guess that's what I was missing myself in kind of stories about just transitioning, that it wasn't it didn't have to be sensational. I remember watching Boys Don't Cry, and it's a brilliant film, but it was just I watched it knowing that it was a story about someone who was transgender, and I guess I was thinking that I would probably recognize something, but I didn't at all, because it's such a different kind of story. And I guess there's been other examples, like the Danish Girl, for example. I watched it and I was like, I would think that I would recognize something in these people, but I didn't at all, because it was such a different approach. And I guess I just wanted to try and make a film about the subject where it was more about normality, that it's just like any other family, really. And it just happens that the dad is a woman.
And I think that's actually a really good sort of note, I guess, for future filmmakers, is that, you know, when we do tell other people's stories, and especially underrepresented voices or stories, that it doesn't have to be sensationalist, that it is, you know, telling the truthful story is enough. It doesn't have to go out with, you know, big fireworks and everything. Just to remind everyone that you can send us your questions if you do want to ask Malou anything. Just send it through the Facebook live comment box, and then we will get to your question. Before we do that, as people's questions come in, Malou, I know you are writing something at the moment, and obviously, you know, we're talking about this film and people are hopefully going to watch it afterwards if they haven't already, but I'm also very excited about what you're up to at the moment. So could you maybe say a few words about what's next for you after all this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm working on 2 films, and one is I've been working on for quite a while now, but and we're hoping to go into production next year, and it's set in Denmark in the 1930s, and it's kind of exploring female sexuality and the limits of the norm for that at that time. And the other film is for kids, based on a Danish kids book.
Brilliant. No, it's nice to hear you're busy, even though, you know, we're in a different situation in the world at the moment to probably when you were making a perfectly normal family.
Yeah, it was actually amazing, because the film released in Denmark 2 weeks before the lockdown here. So it had 2 weeks in the cinema before the cinemas shut down. But it meant that there was so much press and there was a lot of interest, and suddenly, like 2 weeks later, the whole conversation just became about COVID, obviously. And we had no idea at that time that would happen.
Wow, that must also be quite intense once you've built up to something for so long and then it completely shifts.
Yeah.
But also brilliant that there was so much conversation about it in Denmark, with, you know, everything the film is about, and hopefully getting that message out there. Could you maybe talk about when you were filming it before coronavirus hit the world? What was the most the moments that stood out to you the most in making it? What moments did you enjoy making the most, and why?
So I think like that it's more it was more a general thing, but there was something magical about Mikkel and Kaja's connection. So I think just working with them together and seeing what they could kind of, I don't know, bring to each other in a way, that was quite amazing, especially because Kaja was only 10 years old at the time. And just seeing her work as like, I kept forgetting that she was 10 years old, because she was just so professional, and she pretty much had no experience. Also, she's just a natural. So that was amazing. But I think there was also something quite fun about shooting in Mallorca, which just, I'd never been there before, and actually we had to make the film for a few million kroners less than we had budgeted. So we decided first to cut out that part of the film, but then we found out we couldn't cut out that part of the film. It was very important for us. So we got to go, but we didn't get to plan it. Like, we didn't get to go like before shooting. We just went there. We had 4 shooting days, and that was it. So I had never been there. I hadn't seen any locations. I hadn't, like, nothing. So that was quite chaotic, but it was also amazing to see what you can actually make happen in 4 days.
And also kind of how that affects the work that you make. That's really exciting.
Yeah.
I've got a question from Iris. Have you always been into writing, and what was this something that you wanted to write about?
So yeah, I think I've been more into storytelling probably than writing specifically. I think so. I have a background as an actor. So I was working as an actor from I was 12, I think, for TV and films here in Denmark, and actually very early on, I think I was 13 when I was like, I actually want to direct. Like, I was kind of seeing what they were doing, and I was like, this is fun, but that's what I want to do. But it took quite a while longer before I actually made my first short film. So I think it was always about storytelling more than writing. And this specifically, I actually did explore at film school, NFTS. I did explore the working from this experience, or trying. I was thinking about making my grad film about this, but at some point I just found out I wasn't ready for it, and I didn't have the right kind of I guess support around me to work with that at film school. And not because of the NFTS, just because it's so difficult to make a film. But making films at film school is like almost impossible. So I decided that wasn't the right time. But I started kind of thinking, okay, maybe I can do it. So it was like in the back of my head from that point.
Brilliant. And as our Q&A is kind of coming slowly to an end, I was wondering, because obviously there are some people that are going to watch the film at an event just after this, and others might watch it later at home. What would you want to say to people who are about to watch your film, if you could say anything to them?
Well, yeah, so I think there's a lot of kind of doubt about how to go about this subject, especially at the moment. So I think, like, I've experienced a really big change in the last 20 years. So my dad transitioned 20 years ago, and I think until maybe 5 years ago, if I told people, it would still be kind of, people didn't really know how to respond. And suddenly, like, it completely changed, maybe with Caitlyn Jenner being on the cover of Vogue, or just there's something happening like in the last 5 years where people respond very differently, and there's a completely different conversation opening up from them there. And I think with that is also some, I think it's more than carefulness. I think there's also fear in saying the wrong things, and in kind of not knowing what's the correct language to use. And I think having talked to my dad, there's just, it's more important to just talk about it than to be afraid of using the wrong words. So there's something about that I brought into making the film. And because of my dad, I really wanted this film to be also lighthearted and funny. And I think that depends really on the audience, whether you find it funny. But if you do, then know that that was my intention. So it's okay to laugh if that kind of happens naturally. And that was kind of what I wanted to make with the tone of the film, that it is lighthearted, that you can laugh with the characters. and that's important to say, I think, because it can be kind of, you can feel like you're not allowed to.
And I think that's such a beautiful way of wrapping up this Q&A with you. Thank you so much, Malou. It's been amazing to talk to you and to hear about your way into making this fantastic film and kind of your journey with it as well afterwards. So thank you so much. And I hope that everyone will watch the film either again or for the first time after this Q&A. So you can watch A Perfectly Normal Family through different ways. So you can watch it through Modern Films on their website. It is available for you to watch. You could also watch it through some of the partners of this event today. So the Anglo-Danish Society and DK UK Association and the Danish-Scottish Society. Until the 16th of November, when the film will be released on Amazon and other, I guess, streaming versions companies. So I do hope that you really enjoyed the film, that you enjoyed this Q&A. Again, thank you so much to Malou Reymann for giving us insights into writing and directing this film. And thank you to Modern Film for hosting it. And again, I hope you all enjoy the film after today. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye.